All right, well, we're back again. It's been a couple of days. Worked on this piece some. I'm just having a big problem with the perspective in this. And again, remember, I did this from two different sketches. And so radically different points of view on this figure versus this. And so I'm trying to figure out the background. In particular, this bar area here. And you can see I had it running this way. But I think what I have to do is move it a little bit so that it's more this shape. And that runs this perspective line. So here's the other side of the bar and it ends somewhere in this area, but we don't see that, so I don't need to worry about it. You can see I had put those bar stools in to make that delineation. It harkens back to a piece that I'd done many years ago called Alone in a Crowd, which is a painting that my biggest collector swears is my best painting ever. I don't know if I agree or not, but it doesn't matter. Now here's a problem when you get into breaking the picture plane. Now I'm going to have this, which is both a problem and not, a residual piece of the painting before it moved. But I think I've already talked about like those little pips of color that pop up over here. Again, you're not close enough to see that. I don't want that one. Or maybe I do. There's pips of color, so you're getting a little bit of history of where the artwork came from. Sometimes I'll hang on to bad paintings so that I can just flip them upside down and paint over them, and it gives you this thing to work against. That makes it more dynamic. So, I'm sorry, I'm trying to think about what I'm doing and paint at the same time. So we have this much more severe, almost vertical line perspective here now. So, makes things stack up a little bit more and create this vertical, which kind of, I'm beginning to really like this. Kind of echoes the verticality of the figures. So I'm just laying in, these would be a couple of glasses on the bar behind the waitresses. And I like the idea of having these coffee cups here in the foreground, because we servers, those of us in the food industry, consume a fair amount of coffee. It's what gets us through our long hours. So, just getting these sort of blocked in, I'll work on them a little more with the blending in the colors. Just trying to figure out where the bejeebies I am here. So again, that was this idea of figuring out where this perspective line is. Yeah, that's starting to feel like something now. Okay. So, you'll see that come back to life later. Yeah, because it's a big fat mess now. So now I'm going to try to shift into something where you can see and talk a little bit about the blending colors. So, like these areas are warm and cool, I'm going to work on her top here in her hand. So, I've kind of messed up. Both of these whites right now are have cool color in them. So I'm going to wipe off one so I can get back to warm color. And you do have to be aware of the edges as well. I'm even going so far as to peel back some of this skin, which is the very thing that forms on the painting. So I want to start with the warm colors. So we have a little bit of light hitting the top of her shoulder here. I'm just sorry, I just stopped to think about her other hand, as though she's cradling herself here, which will also give us another arm. But we're only going to see just a little bit of. Let's get a little bit of orange. This was from the sketch, the original sketch, and it was like, I wonder what this gesture means. And at a certain level, I don't need to think about that. One of the things that I enjoy is how other people react to the work. I have a very clear, or very might be too strong of a word, I have a relatively clear idea about what's going on in this image, but others, the viewer, will bring their reality to it and their interpretation of what's happening. And to me, that's part of the exciting part, is that people see different things happening. So I'm just getting some of these light, warm colors in here first, because the cools and darks will ride roughshod over the light colors, and it's hard to get back again if you go too far with your darks. So I want to get the light and brights in first. And I'm just getting a little bit of the, and I've worked with these enough to know, so I'm just getting a little bit of area of color in there, and now I'm going to start working on the fingers with just the white, dragging those colors I just laid in. And see, by doing it that way, I've created that shadow in there that delineates between the fingers just by virtue of where I laid the other values. And I'm not trying to get a super sharp, here's each piece of the finger. It's more of a general idea. It's all shape. I mean, ultimately, like I said before, these are abstract paintings. They are a variation of reality. They are not an attempt to take a photograph. That's a very different discipline, one I have great respect for. But I'm not a photographer, and I'm not trying to supplant the camera with my painting, but rather to create areas of color and texture and surface and a narrative element to it all, but not faithfully reproduce the specifics of a scene. I kept thinking I was going to have her thumb in there, and I think I'm not. So here I am belying my own methodologies by laying in some of these cooler colors. So that was some of the phthalo blue, and I'm going to lay in some of this dioxazine purple to get the sense of the shadow part of the arm, and then also her back. So I just ended up with green and not blue. They're actually pretty hard to tell apart. The phthalo green and the phthalo blue tend to look the same. So now just taking that white, picking it up, putting a lot of pressure on there to get more white, lighter pressure to where I want it to be darker, so putting less pigment down on the surface. Therefore letting the darker pigment show through better. I had planned on putting her thumb there, but I think I'm not. Another tool to have handy is a knife. Pick some of that dark back up, scrape it off, come back in with the warm white. Is a method of designation, not to be, so cool white, warm white. And now, because I've got a fair amount of pigment on this, but I want to get it whiter because she's wearing a white shirt, not a blue shirt, wipe off all of the previous, and see now as I come back in here, I get a much brighter white. And also, I don't think I've talked about it yet, but your stroke, brush stroke, paint stick stroke, whatever, finger stroke for that matter, should help create the form that you're depicting. So, like here, I'm rolling up over the arm, the top of the shoulder, getting some of that seam depicted, but also just helping create the volume of her arm here. And that helps show, the turn of the fabric, the roll of everything, the stretching of the muscle armature, and then we'll get down to this cuff. And with the cuff, I want to catch a little light, so I'm picking my yellow back up. Sounded like something just fell. Maybe not. I don't see what fell. Oh, there it is. And then I'll, again, want to be careful about picking up too much of the dark, so being very cautious with my stroke. Now down here it's dry, so I don't have to worry about it. And that becomes a challenge, trying to, where am I going to be able to blend, what has paint on it already, what doesn't. Yeah, it all gets confusing. And this is the person who's been using these things for many, many, many years. I was having a conversation with a young, recently graduated art student, and we were talking about what media I use. And she had said that she had never used these, in fact doesn't use any oils or anything, because she was afraid of how to use them. And the thing is that, as you can see, in areas like this, you can just keep working and changing. Like, I have erased these original red stools, so you can kind of see where the problems lie. So I do want to go ahead and get the dark in here before I stop for today. Stop filming for today. I'm going to keep painting, just so I get this further. This V, I need to help show that V with this other waitress's dark pants under her white apron. And that reiterates that shape. So now I've stopped to think about color. what's going to happen there, I'm not sure yet. You'll have to come back and see what I decide. Because so I'm just putting these bar stools back in where they need to be now, so they show the progression back into space again. That's what dropped the alizarin crimson. So this was a little bit of purple, the dioxazine purple, and alizarin crimson, and red, and that's sort of how I'm getting my shadow. But I'm going to lay a little bit of white to get the top, the highlight area of the stool. And then I'm taking a little orange. So I'm not just, you know, putting in white and red, and that gives me, you know, a light area. But actually, one of the things you want to do is always create your own color. So while I use a very limited palette of paint color, paint stick color, I want to make sure that I'm creating all of my own colors. I'm really owning the pigment. So if you're using tubes of paint, don't just squeeze, you know, don't buy all 6 or 8 or 10 different greens they have on the shelf and then just squeeze a little bit of this out and a little bit of that out and just use the color. You want to own your entire palette. I'm starting to feel pretty good about the gradations here, or the perspective lines, and it helps. It's sort of now we have this these two V's competing against each other. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out in the long run. Oh, that's right, I didn't want to use those lines. Uh-oh. It's those lines. God knows what's going to happen back there. So this is going to be, these are the cabinets. And at this particular establishment, it's where they have all of their liquor bottles are on these shelves up above. And there are these huge wine bottle displays as well. They have to use a library ladder to get to everything, which would probably be pretty frustrating during service. So that, just by virtue of being bottles, will give me a lot of green up there eventually. That's one of the things I'm trying to, because I've been thinking, you know, this large space here, I have to think about the colors that I'm going to use. And sort of these green dots, I mean, those green bottles will respond against the red dots of the bar stools. And those are the kind of things I always have rolling around in my feeble little brain. So anyway, I'm going to let it stop there so these things don't get too long. I'll keep painting. I hope you come back and check it out next. Didn't talk about the Paintstiks. Again, they're Shiva artist Paintstiks. Here's one of the covers. So if you recognize the packaging looks like this in the store, hanging on a rack. And my website is gregleach.com, GREIGLEACH.com. So thanks for taking the time to look. Hope you're enjoying watching these.